Welcome to the Outsmart Burnout podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Zaria Rubin, a functional medicine doctor, an international speaker, and a burnout badass because I've been there myself. After walking away from my own high-stress medical career, I discovered how to break free from burnout to reclaim my passion, purpose, and joy. And now I'm here to help you do the same. From science-backed tips to time-saving hacks, and hopefully some aha moments that just might change your life. So sit back, relax, and let's do this. Today's guest is Dr. Denée Choice, a powerhouse in the leadership space, guiding high-achieving women to live with intention, clarity, and emotional alignment. A physician-turned-leadership coach, Dr. Choice helps successful women break free from the mental clutter and chronic overfunctioning that often leads to burnout. In her latest book, The Authority Myth, she maps the inner architecture that shapes how women rise and offers a path to leading with presence, power, and inner command. In this episode, we will explore how to shift from shoulds to self-trust, how nervous system regulation plays a critical role in decision-making, and why success without peace is really just another form of survival mode. So if you're a woman entrepreneur, a leader, or a change maker craving a more grounded and sustainable way to lead, this conversation is for you. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Denee.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So we have so much to talk about. I think what you teach on and work with and write on is so important to our audience and to everyone listening. And where I usually love to start with people, especially all of my physician guests, is like, how did you get here? How did you go from being a physician to becoming a leadership coach and focusing on high achieving women and burnout? I think it might have something to do with personal experience, but just a wild guess, right?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. So I practiced clinically for about 20 years and got into burnout as a practicing clinician. I was a pain management doctor really at the height of the opioid crisis in rural Ohio. So really tough place to be. It was at the VA. It was a great organization, but just a really difficult time. And I was brought in to start a pain management program. So that was crazy and wonderful and a lot of different things and a great growth experience, but also just was like, no, it's time to move on. I need to do something a little more upstream so that we can prevent people from becoming so chronic and so dependent on opioids and, offering other things. So I got recruited away from that job to a corporate role for a national health and wellness organization and kind of came in on the ground floor of a rehab based like physical medicine pain management program they were building. So that was super fun. I got to use my creative side that we don't get to do a lot as physicians. I wasn't practicing clinically, but I was in the musculoskeletal and pain management space, so I still felt very clinically integrated. I was managing a team of clinicians in that space as well, and we were overseeing appropriateness of care. And that's where I think that's where the story starts, right? As far as how I ended up in leadership coaching. I was employee number 5, not in the organization, but on this team and building this program. So 5 of us, including me, and we grew the team from 5 to 60 in a period of 2 years, which is crazy radical growth, hyper growth. So I was so in the weeds of recruiting, interviewing, hiring, onboarding, managing, this very large team of, high performing clinicians, physicians, physical therapists, occupational therapists, nurses, pharmacists. And I really got to see them from a very different perspective because I was in a systems role and I was again, choosing who we're going to have on the team and what roles they're going to serve and where they can provide them the best value and building out sort of the leadership infrastructure of the team. There was a lot of opportunity to promote good people, either within our team or within other teams within the organization. So that's kind of where I sort of, I don't know, built my body of work, I guess, on learning to read people and see them in a way they can't see themselves, and see really where their zone of genius is and how their skills and talents could best be used to both serve the organization, but also their own professional growth. So that's kind of where I got the bug for nurturing, emerging leaders and helping them grow and realize the next career steps they wanted to take. And I really enjoyed that part of the role. The other part of the role involved a lot of travel and supporting the sales team and having to do a lot of presentations for clients and prospects, et cetera. And I didn't love all the travel involved and being in a different time zone and you know, just not being home. And my kids were
Yeah.
grown by then, so it was manageable, but it wasn't sustainable, right? I mean, I was traveling
Mm.
5 weeks out of 6 probably, um,
Wow.
and, you know, getting that age where perimenopause is a factor and just, again,
Mhm.
all the not having a stable routine, not having access to, like, exercise regularly and not being in control of the food they eat, all of that, right, played into it, and so I ended up in burnout again, even though I
Again,
loved
yeah.
the job, the other part was just completely draining and depleting, and so, yeah, and
Hmm.
after twice, you kinda have to, like,
Boy.
circumstances and start looking at yourself, right?
Okay, that is so fascinating, and that definitely makes me wanna ask the next question. As a physician, we sort of think that we should know better, right? Like, of course, I should have been aware that I was burnt out. I mean, I was not personally, and for you, for it to happen twice, what do you think some of maybe your blind spots were when it came to burnout and figuring out your own burnout and or noticing, like, the early warning signs and preventing it?
Yeah, I think, we're trained in medicine just to work, 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 achieve, get the next certification, get the next degree, get the next training, et cetera, et cetera.
It's just like this constantly moving target, this dangling carrot that you're just chasing. Yeah.
Yes. And that, in hindsight, that was definitely the case in that, executive role. I went in as a medical director and I got promoted like 3 times over 6 years. And so it was constantly seeking the next promotion, the next opportunity. Your plate just keeps expanding. And especially as
Mhm.
women, we kind of like these promotions were like, here's more. Oh, and here's more. Yes, here's more money and more responsibility, but you're sort of like still carrying the load of what you're already carrying. And nobody's saying, oh, here, let me take that off your plate. Right. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, I actually can relate 100% because after I left medicine, I ended up in a startup, which is a whole other form of burnout, and then I did end up in a corporate executive role and same, got promoted every single year and just kept striving and working harder and taking on more and more and more until I just said this enough is enough, but you have to hit that wall almost.
yeah, it's like you don't see it coming,
Mm.
but again, you're thinking, well, this isn't as bad as residency.
Right. Yeah. Well, our bar is so low that, when I was working at the startup, I was leaving work and going home to make dinner at 11 o'clock at night. And I thought, well, gosh, that's an early night. It's great. I don't have to be there all night and then half of the next day. So our perspective was so skewed of what we were willing to tolerate. And I think just at a certain point, you have to wake yourself up and say, okay, this is actually not acceptable anymore.
Yeah. But you're right. You have to hit the wall first, right? I mean, it's,
Yeah. And what did that hitting that wall feel like for you? Because I know it's kind of different for everybody. And sometimes it's mental, sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's both.
yeah. I mean, the second time just sticks out in my mind more because it was like, God, I should have known better, right? And I think I was so depleted and I, just started disconnecting and getting resentful. right?
Mm.
I had created this, amazing career and this amazing role in this company that, did really good work and were very ethical. But the leadership ethos was, just work, work, work and be available at all hours. And because I was an achiever, that's what I did. And we know how to work hard.
Hey, are you listening to the show right now and quietly nodding along, thinking, yeah, this sounds just like me? You're exhausted, but you can't stop. You're not sleeping, and you're definitely never actually resting. You keep telling yourself you just need to get through this next thing, the next deadline, the next quarter, the next season of life, and then you'll slow down, maybe even take a vacation. But that moment never comes. If this sounds like you, I want you to know two things. One, you are not broken. And two, I've got you. I'm Dr. Zaria Rubin, and I created the Burnout Blueprint specifically for this moment. The moment you finally admit something needs to change, but you have no idea where to start, and it feels like there's no time in your busy schedule to fit anything in, even healing. The Burnout Blueprint is a 90-minute session, just you and me, where we figure out exactly what's going on in your nervous system, and I hand you a personalized plan to start feeling like yourself again. No guessing games, no generic advice, just clarity and a real next step. Head over to drzaria.myflowdesk.com. The link is in the show notes. And for a limited time, I'm offering $100 off to the first 10 clients. I can't wait to start this next chapter with you. Oh, yes. So what you're talking about, I think to me, it speaks to the cynicism piece of burnout and the sort of the tripartite model framework for burnout that Dr. Christina Maslow describes and Dr. Herbert Freudenberger. So they talk about cynicism and a sort of a misalignment of values and a lack of trust in the organization. And certainly if an organization is preaching one thing, but then practicing something else and just telling you to work, 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 but despite all of these, beautiful corporate values that they might have on a plaque, then that's a huge disconnect. And that creates that resentment and that cynicism and that feeling like, what's the point of this? And I I don't want to do this anymore. So
Yeah. But I mean,
can definitely relate.
I feel like we have to acknowledge our own complicity in it, right? Like, because nobody made us want to go. Nobody made me want to go for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But it's like I wasn't satisfied with just being a medical director. I wanted the next accolade and
Well,
accomplishment.
because we're trained that way. I mean, that's we are constantly training. It's like sort of saying to like an Olympic athlete, like, well, why are you going for that gold medal? It's like we were training for this. They kept reinforcing it. Society reinforces it. Our families, our friends, everybody reinforces it like gold star, good job, you're amazing, bravo, what's next? And so, we can blame ourselves on the one hand. I mean, of course, we're all responsible for our own destiny and have our own agency, but the sort of almost Pavlovian nature of it that we are just conditioned as smart, brilliant, high achieving, maybe perfectionist women that whatever happened along the way in our lives, in our childhood, in our early formative years, that taught us that our value was derived from just how much we did and how much we achieved. And so of course we're going to keep doing that. Yeah, and it's much harder actually to stop doing that than to keep doing it. Cuz to keep doing it's kind of easy cuz it's what we know,
That's what we
right?
know. But yes, I mean, until you're faced with something that requires you to stop doing it, right?
Yeah. And so, thank goodness you figured it out and were able to take a a left turn, a step in a different direction and branch out on your own. So, there's something that you talked about for a moment earlier, and it's mentioned in some of your work, and I'm really curious about it. You talked about this in your leadership work and the things that you were able to observe and the folks that you managed. You talk about leading from your zone of genius as an anti-burnout strategy. So I'd love to dig into that a little bit more and tell us about what that means for you and how we can all sort of incorporate that or benefit from that.
Yeah. So, it kind of comes back to as especially as women in medicine, right? Or other high achieving women in fields that are complex or male dominated, you have to become really good at a lot of things, right? So there's, you figure out how to do a lot of stuff that doesn't necessarily come natural to you. And you develop this really broad zone of competence, which, you know, we also have to do everything well too, right? So it's really a zone of excellence, but
Yep.
but it's not really our sweet spot, right? It it's energetically costly to do all these things that we've learned how to do that we're good at, but maybe are depleting for us.
Yes.
So your zone of genius is really that sweet spot. And it's not about your subject matter expertise. It's not about your medical specialty. It's not about your, specific leadership role. It is literally how your brain is naturally wired to communicate, negotiate, and lead.
Mm,
And that's your zone of genius. But for so many women, it gets buried in all this, this broad zone of competence or zone of excellence, however you want to look at it. And so it's it's really hard for us to see.
mm,
Sometimes easier for others to see, but other people in our lives have your family sees one view of you, right? Your team at work sees a different kind of view of you. So nobody has that kind of 360 view. So it is kind of hard to figure this out alone. If you've grown up and been socialized in an occupation where you just have to figure things out and become good at a lot of things. But it's really key because once you understand what that is, you can start to curate your plate a little bit, right? You can start to see, oh, yes, this is like for me, developing people, right? Like
mm,
I would not describe myself as an overly people person, meaning I'm not like a natural networker. I'm not going to work the room. I'm the one who's going to sit at a table and talk to one person the entire night, right? And have a very deep conversation. So, but I see people because I listen so intently and I'm just, kind of constantly analyzing and thinking deeply. I see people in a very different way, and that's where I can kind of have that strategic pattern recognition where I can know what they're gonna be good at and also kind of maybe what they're gonna struggle with. And the areas that those areas, that sweet spot or that zone of genius are the things that we do that light us up. We could do them all day and be energized and come, as opposed to what we normally have to do in a day, which might be a little bit of that. Hopefully, there's at least a little bit of that every day with a lot of the stuff that we can do and we can kill it, but it's going to suck the energy out of us.
mm.
So that is like the anti-burnout strategy is recognizing your zone of genius, learning it, and then learning to leverage it because it doesn't take, Herculean changes to what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Little tiny pivots can make big impacts when you see, your energy start going in the right way and you
Mm.
see what is really fulfilling to you in your work and you find ways to do just a little bit more of that and do just a little bit less of the things that are most draining for you, especially.
I mean, I think this is so important and so critical, and I sort of wish it were taught a little bit more in school and that our kids were developed this way. I wish that schools focused on this a little bit more and that our kids were developed in such a way that focused on discovering and maximizing this zone of genius rather than simply what are you good at or gifted at academically? Because certainly I could get all A's on tests and things in science classes and whatnot, but that was not my zone of genius. Medicine was not my zone of genius. So I think when we talk about like, yeah, making these adjustments or these tweaks, in either your day-to-day work, your job, your workplace, or maybe even your career. I think it kind of depends on how deep the mismatch is and whether those tweaks are minor or major. And so, how do you recommend that for people who maybe don't know what their zone of genius is? Maybe they know it on an intuitive level, but they're finding it hard to translate that into a workplace, job or task description.
Yeah. I think that the easiest place to start is to start tracking what you're doing during your days and how it makes you feel. So you don't have to do it moment by moment. You can do it at the end of the day or whatever works for you. But like if you had meetings all morning and you're completely depleted by lunch, but then you had a one on one with your direct report in the afternoon and then you had something that was like strategizing, something for the work that you're doing, noticing how you feel after kind of individual things. And it's not just work, right? Because your zone of genius is how you communicate, negotiate, and lead across your life. So pay attention to the things that you do outside of your job. Many of us have other roles, right? As a parent, as
Hmm.
a spouse, the community leader, a soccer coach, whatever that might be. Which parts of those roles are energizing and which parts of them are depleting or draining. And if you do that for a week or two, and then you look at it and look for patterns, it can really start to clue you in on what is it that what your zone of genius may be, right? Because it's those areas that light you up, that give you energy, you feel like you're in flow, you could do it all day, somebody would pay you to do it, right? And then which ones were the most depleting. And there's going to be a lot of in between stuff that feels more neutral. But those are the two things that are most important to identify because you want to move closer to the things that are energizing for you. And you want to start offloading, delegating, deleting, outsourcing, whatever those things that are most depleting for you. And I mean, that's probably the best way to start understanding it. I have a very formal process that I take my clients through, and we can,
Mm,
put it out in about 90 minutes. But for a DIY type approach, that's really kind of the best
yeah.
way to start figuring out for yourself.
All right, beautiful. Any online tools that you might recommend? Any like quizzes, or I know that there are certain tools where you can sort of discover a little bit more what your values are and, things like the values bridge and things that can help you understand a bit more what makes you tick as a person and what's fulfilling and what isn't, and that might shed some insight. I don't know if there's any tools that you like or recommend.
I am a self professed assessment junkie, and I feel like I've taken them all. And most
Same.
of them are like, "Hmm, that was interesting." And then it goes in a pile somewhere. And it's not
Yeah,
necessarily.
it's the application and how do you translate it?
Yeah. I mean, I think for physicians in particular, and probably clinicians across the board, I think one tool that's really easy to wrap your brain around is the DISC inventory. I don't know if you've taken the DISC.
Oh, yes, I have. I am like 90% I. Shocking, I know.
Strong C, super like
Yeah.
all the way on the border, right? So this is why it's a great tool. It helps you understand a bit about you, right? Like how you process things, the pace, like why your pace is different than my pace. I like, if you ask me a question in a brainstorming meeting, I'm just going to be like a deer in the headlights, right? Because I need time to think about it.
That's my happy place.
But you're just blurting things out, which
Yeah,
is
exactly.
meaning, by the way, right? You're just blurting things out, not thinking about, not worried about what people are going to think. And I'm like back here going, oh, I can't say that. That's stupid. No, that'll never work. I mean, and C's and I's are like
Yeah.
opposite on the grid.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
you have a little bit in common with D's.
Yes,
And
I have quite a bit of D and I, but I have like 0 S and, some C because I'm a scientist, but not
of
not a
course,
whole lot. Yeah, for folks, we'll put the disc in the, in the show notes in terms of explaining what these letters mean. Let's just say that very high I, you probably shouldn't be a physician.
I have to tell you a funny story about that.
Yeah.
First of all, I will tell you that we all have all of them in us, right? We have all the
Yep.
levels, all those quadrants in us. It's just that um, we naturally tend to revert to one of the 4 styles, and especially under stress or conflict. And that's
Yeah.
where it's a great tool because it helps you understand how you respond in stress and conflict, and it helps you understand why other people don't react the same way as you, because we all think everybody should respond the same way that we do. But my funny story is I actually do a lot of leadership training with physicians in the leadership communication space. And there's a course and they all take the disc as part of it. And so many of the hundreds, I've worked with hundreds of physicians over the past probably 3 or 4 years, seen all their disc scores, and the largest majority by far of physicians fall in the D and C category, right? Whether they're a combination or, one or the other, or they're a DC or they're a CS, CS, or very few. We see it. We see I's and we see S's. I would say I is probably the least common, but we
Shocker.
see
Yeah.
them. You'd be like, a lot of times they're they're
Yeah.
people, right? Right?
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
relations, I mean, that's really important to eyes but but, then again, recently there was a neurosurgeon who was an eye, and I was like, "Where did this go?" I mean, it's just like so medicine attracts all kinds of people, but again, the
That's
majority
a
probably
first.
that
Yeah.
decisive, type
Oh,
of.
yes, my husband's a surgeon. He's pretty much all D and C. Yeah. Well, this is so fascinating. I wanna switch gears a little bit because there's so much that we have to talk about, but I wanna touch on another area that you talk about a lot in your work, which is women, successful women, women leaders, women in business, and over functioning,
Mm.
and how we can help women leaders, put down what doesn't belong to us.
Yes, that is a great topic. We didn't get this way by accident, right? I mean, this is how we were socialized from a very young age to be adaptable, dependable, don't complain, keep working, and over time, we've become the problem solvers and the fixers and, the ones that'll just do it, right? And carry the load. And it becomes sort of our a little bit of a safe zone, right? Like, oh, we're valued because we take care of everything.
If you want it done right, do it yourself.
There's that too, right? So we started to equate our value with those things, right? Taking care of people not complaining, people not thinking that we didn't do XYZ, right? And we spend all this time and energy overing, right? Overthinking, over preparing, overworking, all of it. And it's not sustainable, right? That is I mean, totally leads to burnout. And it is probably I think a lot of it is derived from trying to control our environment, right? Like, or trying to control, how people perceive us, trying to control, again, that promotion that we want. But yeah, the overs are like this. Perfectionism is trying to over control the environment so that, that nobody judges you.
Mm.
And people pleasing is another version of that. And imposter syndrome is another, they're all different versions, but they all kind of come down to fear of how we're going to be perceived, that we're not going to be good enough,
I mean, it
worthiness.
carries over into motherhood as well.
Yeah.
Very often, I think that women who overfunction at work overfunction at home as well, and they're doing all the things, and they're in charge of every aspect of, school and lunches and dentists and doctor's appointments and this and that, and it's like, at a certain point, there's only so many hours in the day, you only have so many hands.
And it's like that even in marriages where the woman is the breadwinner. The woman
Yep.
still, you know, carries the lion's share of, the parental and childcare, responsibilities.
Mental load, the mental load that we talk about so often, and yeah, so you talk a lot also about the concept of, like, shoulds and shoulding all over yourself. That's should, should, just in case the audio is not clear, and so how do we start to let go of that and offload some of the things that we keep thinking that we should be doing?
Well, I think first you have to decide what you want to do because a lot of times we tell ourselves we should do something when it's something we really choose to do. And when we're telling when we say I should do that, we're not owning the fact that it's our choice and it's very disempowering. And then you get a lot of resentment creep with that. The flip side of that is there's a lot of things that we really shouldn't be doing or we shouldn't be carrying anymore. So it's really looking at it and making a decision what you I wanted to say what you should, what you choose to continue and what you choose to offload in whatever manner you do that. And I think that we need to look at this across the board, right? In our home roles, in our community roles, in our work, our job, roles. What is it that we choose to continue with and what do we choose to no longer carry?
Yes. And I mean, there's this reframe of like, well, I have to do this, I have to do this, have to do this. And like, well, I get to do this because I have this amazing life or I'm choosing to do this. And it does sort of help the reframe. I mean, sometimes I roll my eyes at it a little bit, but if you can reframe it as something that you are choosing, that you do have some agency over rather than it's being like forced upon you.
Absolutely.
Hmm. So, last but not least, small, minor topic like, how do we get more women into positions of power and leadership? Because the current system ain't working.
Yeah. Well, that is
The $1,000,000 question.
and really that's my mission at this point in my life is to help elevate more women into senior leadership positions, right? We have a lot of women who are in sort of frontline leadership roles, not just in healthcare, but in healthcare that tends to be like a medical director role, right? But then how many are in the C-suite and chief jobs? Very, very few.
Mhm.
And I think
We're in the leadership jobs where you have to do everybody's work all the time, and,
yeah.
like, it's just you're doing all your clinical work and all the administrative work and everybody else's job, and those are the leadership jobs that we get to have, yeah.
And you're not, I mean, and we need more women at the table where decisions are made, right? That's the point is we need more
Yes.
people more women in senior leadership. And, there's a lot of reasons why it's tough to get there, right? In different fields. And certainly gender bias is very real and very prevalent. And a lot of it is implicit, right? I mean, a lot of it is not like people who are actively trying to be biased against women, but it's just the way they've been raised and the way they perceive things. So, where we have control is within ourselves and we create our own barriers also. Some of that is like, okay, I'm going to continue to be the fix everything person. I'm going to be the indispensable problem solver. And that way I'm going to guarantee that, my job security or whatever that is. But you can't, when you're stuck in execution mode, you really can't move into that executive mode, right? Where you're looking at strategic thinking and higher level systems thinking. So, part of it is just dropping um, the belief that you have to carry it all because we don't have to carry it all. Part of it is understanding that your innate leadership advantage, your innate leadership style is perfect, right? You don't need to perform leadership like you've seen it done. And this is really hard, I think, because we've seen certain leadership styles rewarded, and that's who gets promoted. And so we've adopted some of those traits because we wanted to get promoted, right? Or be recognized or whatever achievement. It can be hard to know what's true and what is kind of the mask that you've put on in order to succeed. But that sort of performance mode, again, whether it was intentional or unintentional, only gets you so far because at some point it just again, it turns into one of those factors that depletes you and you end up burnout and you're not effective and you're not authentic as a leader. But leaning into your own leadership truth, right? Authentic style, um, that is what will get more women into leadership. It helps to have, a guide, someone that can help you navigate the roadblocks and the blind spots and that sort of thing. We tend to wait until we're tapped, right? Like, or we maybe have been told, just it's not your turn yet. Keep your head down, keep
Mm,
working it, it'll be your turn someday. And, you start seeing people that are leapfrogging you.
mm,
So it's, raising your hand and saying, "Hey, I want this. I'd like to develop what opportunities are available for me in the organization." Starting to raise your hand and ask, right? Ask for opportunities. Let them know you're interested. And when you get into leadership roles, learning to negotiate. This is something I work with clients with all the time, where you stop asking permission and you start advocating for the conditions of success. Because when they put you in a position and you are responsible for something but don't have the authority to do what needs to be done, I mean,
yeah,
that's
that's a
losing that.
recipe for burnout and frustration. And yeah, oh my goodness. We could just talk all day about all of these topics 'cause I think they're so important. The next segment on the show is something fun that I'm doing called rapid fire, where I just ask you a bunch of kind of quick questions and yeah, we'll see where it takes us. So, what is one should that you've let go of recently?
Oh my goodness. I told you I was a deep processor. I don't do rapid fire.
You're like, I hate this segment.
Leave it to an eye to
I
come up with something
see.
like this.
I love it. Yeah, of course, I love it because it really it people just it sort of forces you to tap in to your gut reaction
Yeah.
rather than overthinking it.
Okay. I think the should that I'm really working on letting go is I should be perfect, right? I mean, like, it doesn't have to be polished. It doesn't have to be, I mean, people want the real authentic version of you. They don't want the polished, camera ready, Instagram ready, version of you. So I think that is
But look,
probably.
we are perfect.
Oh,
Look at us.
yes.
But, I feel like I would probably get so much more done if I wasn't so much of a perfectionist.
Yeah.
And, sometimes done is better than perfect, right?
Yeah. I had a mentor who used to say B minus work changes the world. And then she would say, and you have to remember your B minus work is somebody else's A plus work, right? Because you just.
That's so true. I always talk about that in my keynotes on burnout when, one of the 3 pillars of burnout is, decreased productivity. And I'm like, but that doesn't really apply to overachievers and type AAA perfectionists because decreased productivity for us probably going to go unnoticed or be praised as great job. So, okay, love that. All right. What book are you currently reading that you might recommend to our readers?
The best book that I read recently that I can remember is, it's a Dan Brown book. I think it's called The Source. No, The Secret of Secrets, The Secret of Secrets. Fascinating.
And is it
Love Dan
fiction or
Brown.
nonfiction?
It's it's all of Dan Brown books are fiction, but they're
Right.
based on, like, the science in it is real.
History that yeah.
There's enough truth in it that you start going, "Oh," and of course, there's always conspiracy theories but that was a good one.
Okay, cool.
I don't wanna spoiler
Okay.
alert. You read it, you'll
All
love it.
right. I'm not going to torture you further. I'll just one more. What is one belief that you wish that every woman leader would unlearn?
There's so many. I feel like if they just would unlearn the belief that they have to carry it all, things would change. I mean, that is like the first domino, and
Right.
then
I
the
was just going to say, what's the domino belief for today?
yeah,
Like,
I
what's the
mean,
domino belief today?
and that's the one that, like, again, you wanna go for the low-hanging fruit things that are, so, yeah, I think that would be it. You don't have to
Okay.
carry it all. You were never meant to carry it all. Women back in the day,
Yes.
they had tribes, they had villages to lead,
Yes.
right?
Yes. It takes a village to lead a village, right? I just came up with that on the fly because I'm an I. Okay. So for women who are listening who are struggling with possibly either their identity, their role, they want more, they're in a leadership role they don't like, or they want to be in a different leadership role. How can folks find you and work with you?
My website is choiceleadershipconsulting.com. So they can reach out on my website. I'm on LinkedIn at Denée Choice. I just started a YouTube channel. I'm at Denée Choice there as well. But yeah, I would
Yeah,
love
we'll put all those links in the show notes for sure, and folks can reach out and see how you guys can work together, right?
Yep, that'd be great. I would love to connect. And again, I am here to help more women have a seat at the table where decisions are made.
Yes, because if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? So, if this episode resonated with you, if you are a woman leader, if you know women leaders, if you've got friends who are struggling with their zone of genius, this podcast was pretty genius, if I do say so myself. So, why don't you go ahead and like it, rate it, leave us a review? That would be amazing. Positive reviews, always welcome, and share it. Share it with friends. It really does help more people discover the podcast. And, that's our goal. We're on all the podcast platforms on Apple, on Spotify, on, all the places. So give us a like, a review, and a share. And as always, until next time, remember burnout is not your destiny, it's your wake up call.